Howdy freeze dryers, welcome back to the Live Life Simple Kitchen. Today we are going to make some homemade croutons. We're going to do 4 different kinds. We're going to have everything from savory to sweet to top anything you can possibly think of, from salads to ice cream. But we can't have any homemade croutons if we don't get started, so let's get to it. So most of the time when you think of croutons, you think of a Caesar salad, and those are typically made from sourdough bread. So we're gonna do a tray of sourdough croutons the traditional way. And then I also wanna try it with some French bread. But just to kind of switch it up a little bit, I would like to do some rye bread. And what my thinking is those delicious rye Gardetto chips. So try and make our own version of that with maybe a little Worcestershire, some garlic salt. It's gonna be awesome. And then last but not least, I want to use our trusty Hawaiian bread. This is one of my newfound favorites. This is from Walmart, and you may recall me using this a couple of times in the last few weeks even. But I think we're gonna get started with our sourdough croutons, and all we're gonna need to do for that is we're gonna need to dice up some bread. And I think the easiest way to gauge how much you need is to actually cut up the bread and put it in the tray first before we go through all of the cooking and the prepping of the croutons. So one thing that normally makes a good crouton without freeze drying is a crust on the outside, like a good crisp. So I would imagine that would make a good freeze dried crouton as well. I'm gonna try and dice these in uniform sizes, that way they all kind of dry evenly, they all turn out exactly the same. Ideally, it's not gonna matter anyway because they're all going to be completely free of moisture. So just for reference, my medium tray took about 6 pieces of bread that were this size. You want to make sure that you're cutting them pretty small. If you make the croutons too big, I think it's gonna be overwhelming and really distracting from whatever you're putting it into, a salad or whatever. And now that we know how much we need to put in the tray, I'm gonna add this to a bowl. We're gonna season this with some salt and pepper according to your taste. You can also use some garlic salt if you wanted to. And then we're just gonna slowly add in some broth. I'm gonna use vegetable broth. It's gonna help with not sticking in the pan, which is where we're going to next. But you don't want the bread to just be soaked. You want the ingredients to stick to it. So I think half a cup is pretty good. I think any more and we're gonna have some soggy bread. And then I'm gonna add this to a frying pan on high heat. And then once this warms up, we're gonna add some Parmesan cheese. Now that your frying pan is hot, we'll start by adding a cup of Parmesan. And really the key here is to not let the bread burn, but you want that cheese to melt all in and put a crisp on the crouton. So here's this tray. I ended up adding a couple more slices of bread. So I went up to 8 slices of bread, just added a little bit more cheese. It's really difficult to not have everything just kind of clumped together. I'm hoping as this freeze dries that they will fall back into individual pieces. The key to not letting this burn or get ruined, keeping this pan moving that whole time. And next I want to try some French bread, but I want to try something a little different on the French bread. The French bread is a little bit trickier because you cannot dice it as small just because of the texture of French bread. For French bread, we're definitely going to want a bread knife, at least to do the slices. French bread is going to be a little different. Just for reference, this was 10 slices of French bread. I don't want it heaping like the croutons necessarily because we're gonna coat this in broth, and you can do any kind of broth you want to, but really you want the broth to just make that bread soggy. And what this is gonna do is when this freeze dries and all that moisture comes out of this, it's gonna be super concentrated into that bread. I ended up using a whole container of vegetable broth, which is about 4 cups. When this is wet like this, it's also a good time to add any kind of spices that you want. I'm gonna do a little basil and oregano, but you can do whatever you choose. Now that one's done as well. Let's move on to our Hawaiian bread. And nothing fancy with the Hawaiian bread. I think I'm actually just gonna dice it and do it plain. I kind of contemplated doing a little more sweetness, but I think what this would be really good for is topping a salad that has berries, fruits, nuts, things like that in it. Or you could use this for with custard or something like that, or ice cream, sundaes. This has a really sweet flavor. It's almost, it's kind of one step down from a cake. You could also put some cinnamon on this if you could find a way to get it to stick after it was freeze dried. This was about 7 pieces of the Hawaiian bread, just for reference. I think that's ready to go. The more I use this stuff for freeze drying, the more I love it. The texture is awesome, and it's no different with the cubes. It worked well for the French toast. It also works well for the cubes. The texture is just really good, and it holds its shape really well. I think that's gonna be awesome. You could also do our French toast video that I did last week, and you could dice that French toast up into little cubes like this too, for an ice cream topper or something like that. That could be cool. And last but not least, let's do our Gardetto's Copycat rye bread chips. This one might be a little tricky to do to get it to the thickness of the Gardettos, but I think I have a plan. If you take part of your loaf of bread and just kind of squeeze it together and just go real slow with a bread knife, you can actually get this pretty thin. Rye is a very thick textured bread. Holds its shape very well, so it's pretty easy to get a thin piece. Added it back into a bowl, took about 5 or 6 pieces of that rye bread, diced real thin, and then we did it kind of into a chip type shape. And these are made to taste like Gardettos by 3 ingredients from what I can tell. You need Worcestershire sauce, you need onion powder, and you need garlic powder. And if you want to, you can add some salt as well. I'm gonna start off with about a 1/2 cup of Worcestershire, and I'm gonna toss this while I'm adding it, so we can cover this as much as possible, because the bread is going to want to soak up just in spots otherwise. So you really want to try and get this evenly coated as much as possible. And then we're going to do the same with the onion powder. There's really not a magic amount. It's pretty much how you want this to taste. In fact, you could probably dial back this Worcestershire too, because it can get overpowering really fast, and once this is freeze dried, it's probably going to be extra concentrated. All right, now let's toss these onto the tray. You could also, if you wanted to, layer these with an additional layer of parchment on top, and then do another layer of the Gardettos, or any of the things that we did today for that matter. And I always recommend putting everything on parchment, at least parchment, if not silicone. Sometimes one is better than the other. There's really no rock solid determination of what you should use. I'm gonna pop these in the freeze dryer, and we're gonna do a full freeze drying cycle today. And this recipe, as well as about 150 others at this point, can be found in the Freeze Drying Cookbook. That is our new cookbook that's either coming out or is already out last week, depending on when I release this video. I'm not quite sure yet. And that cookbook not only tells you the recipes that I do on my videos, those get uploaded every single week, but it also shows the freeze times, it shows you best practices, and it's really just an entire guidebook and manual, if you will, for freeze drying, not just a cookbook. Also, please take a moment to subscribe and click the bell to get notifications of future videos. For us, that's every Sunday at 8 a.m. If you like the video, if you found everything helpful, if you found other videos helpful, let us know. Give us a thumbs up. If you'd like to see what other freeze dryers are doing, tips from other freeze dryers, connect with other people, or you might just have a question about freeze drying, try joining one of our social media groups. We have a Facebook group, we have a MeWe group, and if you're a little bit shy on social media, you can use this magnifying glass. That's the search function on that group. You can search keywords and different members and topics and things like that. And if you're ready to purchase a freeze dryer and you found our information helpful, then just let us know by using our affiliate link when you purchase your freeze dryer. That sends us a small commission. It helps us create this YouTube content. It helps us maintain our social media groups, helps us do giveaways in the social media groups. It also helps us develop new products and accessories for the freeze dryer at freezedryingsupplies.com. And we will actually have some new products coming out for the freeze dryer very, very soon. Let's get back to our freeze dried croutons coming up. I love it when things go quickly. And this was only about 22 hours, which you would expect because bread, there's not a whole lot of moisture in it. So I'm gonna drain this out, I'm gonna pull it out, we're gonna bag it up, we're gonna do a taste test and see what kind of delicious croutons we can add to some delicious meals. All right, all of our finished product looks really, really good. Side note, I've been using a kilowatt meter again, just because I've been going through my old videos and I used to do that quite a bit. And since I moved back to the medium, I'm actually able to track this again. This cycle took 13.54 kilowatt hours, so at 10 cents per kilowatt hour, it's only about $1.35 in electricity for this cycle. But back to the croutons, they everything looks really good. Everything turned out well. I was a little concerned with our first initial Parmesan croutons, but they actually will break apart now that they're freeze dried. They were kind of clumping together before I put it in. The cheese was kind of making big chunks like this, but they can all be separated individually now. Everything looks really good to be able to put it onto a salad. Labels ready to go. These can be found on the cookbook, one of the downloadables that we have. All right, there's my oxygen absorber. I know everyone always comments that they don't think I put oxygen absorbers in, but most of the time it just doesn't really work with recording and trying to do all this at the same time. All right, so we're ready to go. I took my vacuum time way down because I don't want to crush these as it sucks it back together. So I only did about five seconds of vacuum time and then some seal time. There we go. Now let's get to the important part, eating. And I'm gonna do these in the order that I freeze dried them. So I'm gonna do the regular Parmesan ones first, and I really like the way that the Parmesan actually turned out. I was a little concerned that it would be oily or greasy. It doesn't seem to be at all. I also made sure to bring some water because these are very dry. The Parmesan ones are really good. I really like them a lot. The cheese just is amazing. And I thought maybe not having oil on there would change it a little bit, but you're still getting the crisp. It's a little bit healthier version, I guess. I don't know. All right, next I'm gonna do the French bread that was completely submerged in vegetable broth, and you could do any kind of broth you wanted to. And then we topped it with some oregano and basil. And that has a lot of flavor. That would be a great salad topper. The other one also would be a great salad topper. That surprisingly has way more flavor than I thought it would. French bread with veggie broth. Next I want to show you what these Hawaiian bread cubes look like. It's almost like a shortbread type of texture consistency. I think these would be great to top ice cream with. They'd be great for a sweeter salad that has berries and fruits and stuff, maybe. You could probably also crumble this into a powder and use it for all kinds of stuff like toppers for ice creams, sundaes, custard, things like that. Not overly sweet. It's actually not as sweet as I thought it was going to be, but another thing I just thought about is when you make like bars, just sweets, when you bake bars, if you could put these in the topping of different kinds of bars, like bars that have jelly type toppings and stuff, probably be pretty tasty. I saved the best for last. I've really been anticipating trying this one, and it's good that it is last because I think the flavor is gonna be really overpowering. Lots of Worcestershire, which is pretty salty, and then some garlic salt and onion powder, garlic powder. So lots of flavor in these, I'm guessing. Well, they're not 100% like a Gardetto because the texture is a little different, but the taste is there. I think it does taste like a Gardetto. This would be awesome on salads and a million other things you could use this for, or just snack on. We'll probably eat this whole bag before the day is gone. So it's full of flavor, but actually not as much saltiness as I thought it would be, and I'm pretty salt sensitive, so it's actually, I really like it. It's not overly salty, and I think the amount of Worcestershire that we added was right on. Well, these were all winners in my book, and I love stuff like this to put on salads because it gives you that thing to look forward to. And oftentimes, like these could be, they complement the flavor of what's in the salad. So not just salads, you could use them in all kinds of different things. But total win today, all 4 times. I really like it. In the meantime, this is Retired at 40. Remember to live life simple. Catch you next week.